Hi friends, welcome back to the music theory teaching portion of my YouTube channel. I wasn't able to post yesterday on my normal Thursday because yesterday when I was driving, something happened to my brakes, so I had to deal with that all day yesterday. So today in this music theory lesson, we will be going over enharmonic equivalents. Also, ignore the lesson 1. I changed it to lesson 2, but it didn't update. But anyway, enharmonic equivalence basically means notes that are spelled differently but sound the same. And to understand that, we will need to go over what sharps and flats are. So, there are flats. There's a natural, and then there's double sharps and double flats. But we'll go over the doubles in a minute. So the sharp looks like a hashtag, kind of, but it's slanted. And then the flat, it looks like a stick with half a heart. Some people call it a B, but you probably don't want to call it a B just because you have a note B and you don't want that to be like BB, I guess. And I'm going to show you what they look like. So I'm going to do a B flat, and we are going to put flat on the B. So this is what we call B flat. When you don't have a key signature, and we'll go over key signatures later also, but probably not in this video. You can put, this is what you call an accidental. So we're in the key of C. That means there are no sharps or flats over here in between the clef and the time signature. This is the time signature. So you will put this to dictate that it is a B flat as opposed to a B natural. Now, B natural is basically the B we talked about last time when talking about notes. And you can tell they sound different because they're what we call a half step apart. And I will get into what that is later in the video. So a sharp is the opposite. It raises it a half step, and it's the one that looks like a hashtag. So right here, I'm going to show in treble clef. We will have a C, and ignore this line right here. Something is kind of messed up in my software. So we will add the sharp. And as you can hear, it raises in pitch. So it's a half step above the C. So how does this relate to what I said earlier in harmonic equivalence? That being notes spelled different but sound the same. Well, I'll give you an example up in treble clef and in bass clef. So, say we have a G and we make it flat. Hold on. So we have a G flat, but we have an F sharp. So, an F sharp is a half step up from F, and a G flat is a half step down from G. So, basically, these notes, they sound the same, but they're written differently. The reason they are written differently because when you get into harder music and other types of music, there's like a preference, and I guess it depends on what key you're in and everything on why you would want to write a G flat instead of an F sharp. But they sound the same. They're written two different ways and two different notes, and it again depends on the music you are writing or reading. And so, yeah, they're the same notes. And I will give you an example up in treble clef. So, let's say we have a C sharp. Let me put a sharp on it. A C sharp. But we then have a D flat. C sharp is a half step up from C. And then a D flat is a half step below D. So they make the same sound and same principle. You can do these for all the notes that are like apart by this much, like spaced a line. You can't have like an F sharp can't equal an A flat. An F sharp has to equal a G flat. It has to be this far, like between each other, the half, the whole. And yeah, so that is on sharps and flats and how it relates to enharmonic equivalence. So you're hearing me talk about half steps and whole steps, and you're probably wondering what I'm talking about. Well, right here I've laid out what we call the B flat scale, and I will go over different types of scales and such in later videos, probably one solely relating to scales. So right here is the B flat scale. It's made of B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, and then the octave B flat. So this is how you set up a major scale. When looking at the piano, down here, right here is the highlighted B flat. And when you move to C, this is counted as a whole step. You move 1, 2. You move a whole 2 from this note, the B flat. You move 2 keys to the C. And that is a whole step. So it'll be a whole step in between B flat and C. And a whole step in between C and D, because you move these 2 keys. Now from D to E flat is something different. This is what we consider a half step. You go from D to E flat, which you only move the 1 key. You don't move 2 keys like you did down here, B flat to B natural to C. You move D to E flat. And because you moved 1 note, then that is a half step. Now, if it was an E natural, you would move a whole step. But because it's an E flat in the scale, it is a half step. And so you have a pattern. Let me put the flat back on this. You have a pattern when going up the scale. E flat to F is another whole step. F to G, a whole step. G to A is another whole step and a half step. So it goes whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And that's just a summary of what whole steps and half steps are. Since this is a major key, and I'll go over what different types of are like major, minor, different types of minor, and modes. But again, we'll get into that later. This is how you set up a major scale. You go whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And you can do this on any note. Like, here we go. We'll do C, for example. So we do C. A whole step is D. Another whole step is E. Then a half step from E to F, it's a half step. And then F to G, whole. G to A, whole. A to B, whole. B to C, half. And so you can kind of pick any note and make a major scale like that. There are 12 major scales and everything. But again, we will go into that another day when I'm going over different types of scales. So I'm going to go over what a double sharp and a double flat is, just for curiosity. You really won't, especially in beginner situation, you won't see them. I think in all my 7 years, I think I've been playing for longer than 7 years. Anyway, in all my years, I have only ran across a few times. I ran across a few double sharps in one solo I had in high school. And then I've ran across a few double flats in different pieces I've played. So you really won't run into them unless you're doing harder material or solos. But I'll still go over them because I'm already going over flats and sharps in this video. So a double flat. Here we have B double flat. It's a different note than, say, B flat. Hold on. Let me do B flat. Well, hold on. Okay, so here's B flat. And this is B double flat. You can tell, of course, because the two flats as verse instead of the one flat. Now they sound different. The enharmonic to B double flat is A natural. And you're probably thinking, why don't you just write A natural? It's natural. In some keys, some pieces, it is preferred to write such as B double flat. Like if you're playing in the key of, say, G flat or C flat, which I'll go over later, and you can then relate back to this video. When you're playing in that key, in that piece, you don't really like the idea of writing something natural. It looks better to write it flat, per se. And the same thing with sharps. If you're writing in like C sharp major, it's better to write the double sharp as opposed to writing it natural. And I'll show you what a double sharp looks like. Okay, so here we have C sharp and C double sharp. Now this is different. The double sharp looks like an X. Kind of like an X. This is what the double sharp is down here. It looks like an X when written. So it's harder to tell what it is as opposed to the double flat that has the two B looking things. The stick with half a heart. These also sound different. Here's C sharp, and here's C double sharp. Now, when playing C double sharp, it sounds like D. They're essentially, they make the same sound. They are just written differently. Like I said, if you're writing in C sharp major scale, that's the scale you're writing your piece in. It's better to write C double sharp than D natural, because you've got all of these sharps going on, and it's just better to write that way. It seems cleaner. Yeah. And again, like you guys will like barely see these. It's more upper level, and I'm just going through it, so if you ever do see it, say you're trying out for an all district solo, you're in like a competitive band, something that plays higher music, or you're playing higher music by yourself, and you just won't get tripped up by that. So now you know that's on double sharps and double flats. Lastly, I'm going to go over different common clefs. These are just common clefs you will see. I told you I mentioned this in the last video. So even though it doesn't really relate to enharmonics, I'm just going to show you the different clefs. So right here we have bass clef. It can also be called the G clef. No, it can also be called the F clef. Sorry, the treble clef is called the G clef. So we have bass clef. It's called the F clef. That's because this F is in between these two dots. You can see this F line is in between these two dots. So that's why it is called the F clef. Plus the circle right here that is on the F line, it has to be on the F line or it's not a bass clef. Now, this is a little bit different than treble. Treble can also be called the G clef. You have to, when making the treble, it looks a little bit different. It's kind of like a big swirl. The end of the swirl, it lands on the G line right here, where the G sits in treble clef. So you have this big old roller coaster, and it lands on the G. It has to land on the G or it's not a treble clef. And that just shows like different where they are and just how they're different. Bass clef is higher than treble clef. That's why it's down here. But bass clef plays higher pitches than treble plays higher pitches than bass clef. Sorry, my words are all over the place. But I hope you're getting what I'm trying to put down. Treble plays higher than bass clef. So this F is like down here. This is also an F. This is an octave up. So this F right here equals this F. So when it's written, it's higher. And then here's another F. And then it keeps going. So bass clef, higher than treble. That's just an easy thing to remember. Okay, so here we are. We have tenor clef and alto clef. Alto clef is higher than tenor. So it goes bass, tenor, alto, treble. Like it is in chorale settings when you have soprano, alto, tenor, bass. That's basically the same concept, except soprano and alto read treble, and then bass. And anyway, so it's kind of the same concept. Do. So alto clef, it's in the staff. It's this fancy man in the staff. They look exactly the same. They've got the big bold line, the tiny line, and then the fancy 3 looking homie. And I think it looks pretty cool. I like it. Alto clef, the C, so it goes off of C. And this middle line is a C. Hold on. My thing's weird, so I can't really show you. But I haven't really figured out the Baylays yet, but that's okay. So this middle line right here that intercepts is the C. And the same thing, the C just gets moved around, it gets moved up. And so this becomes the C when dealing with tenor. So you really won't see these clefs that too much. Alto clef, it's usually played with like viola and alto trombone, and it's barely seen. And tenor clef, barely seen. You can see it in upper range of like cello, double bass, bassoon, and trombone. I've actually played an alto clef. My band director, she's kind of mean. She decided to give us our final exam, and I had to read an alto clef, and this was in high school. And I knew nothing about it, and she was not going to change it, so I had to go home and learn alto clef. So this is why I'm going to give you a little crash tutorial. That's the only time I've ever seen alto clef. I have seen tenor clef in some solos. Euphonium and trombone can play like the same solos basically, and so in high school I ran a lot of trombone solos. My band director let me copy some and everything, but I ran across tenor clef. It's not really seen often, but it can. And so just the thing about these, just remember the line that it starts on is C. So for tenor clef, what the bass clef F is the tenor clef C. And what the treble clef B is the alto's C. It's kind of complicated, but it's okay. I'll try to go over these maybe some more in the future, but really you don't have to worry about them too much, unless you play like viola. Which if you play viola, sorry, I'm going slow. So yeah, you don't really have to go about these too much. And again, I'll probably, when I'm doing scales, I'll use these and I'll do all of them. That way you can kind of see how this one works, going scales up and down, up and down. But just keep in mind where the line is on the fancy 3, that's the C. Line is on the fancy 3, that's a C. Anyway, so this has been the Enharmonic equivalent music theory teaching notes. I hope you guys learned something, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. Stay safe, friends. Be careful. Just have a wonderful day. Be a kind human. Thank you for watching. Bye.